Discussion and debate. New security measures are coming to the Brown County Courthouse.
The county board just voted unanimously to approve construction of a security building at the entrance of the courthouse. Emily Riley shows us the current blueprint of the building and tells us when that construction might start. Emily.
Cami, the Brown County Sheriff tells me that the Brown County Courthouse is one of the few courthouses in the state that doesn't have security screening, but soon that will change.
And future needs of the courthouse.
The plan is to add a security building that will connect both the courthouse annex and the district attorney's office. The $4 million building will serve as a screening area for guns and other weapons.
Ideally, it would be great if we could start, the project as far as breaking ground by fall of this year, but that might be a pretty aggressive schedule to try to get there in this environment with supply chain issues and stuff like that. But certainly this is full speed ahead and we want to get it done as quickly as possible.
For decades, there's been talk of adding more security to the courthouse. The chair of the Brown County Public Safety Committee says there have been situations where people have brought weapons into the courthouse. He hopes the extra security might help prevent a future incident.
This is a building where there's emotional trauma going on every day of the week that it's open. There's something traumatic in someone's life that goes on in that building, which means we should take some extra steps to make sure that that is secure for those people that are coming there.
Officials understand there's concern about changing the look of the historic courthouse.
Throughout this whole process, there's been consideration to a single point entrance and screening that did not detract from the beauty of the outside as well as the inside of that courthouse.
The Brown County Sheriff says that the next step is to hire a project manager, and the early design of it might change as the project moves forward. Reporting live in Green Bay, Emily Riley, Action 2 News.